Get you caught up on the latest shutdown movements with NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. And Alice, hello to you. We mentioned at the top of our show that some more votes were planned later on today. What exactly are these votes and what are the likelihood they could move the needle?
Good morning, Chesley. So the Senate has been consistently bringing up a pair of votes that are an attempt to pass a stopgap funding measure just to reopen the government for 7 weeks and allow for more negotiations. These votes have continuously failed in the Senate ever since we entered this shutdown now a week ago. And the conditions on the ground are not changing. So there really is no reason to believe that before we hear about any kind of substantial negotiations, any kind of real movement between the parties, that one of these votes is going to pass.
All right, 1 week in, and we're now seeing some of the impacts from the shutdown, especially in aviation, the worst shutdown at an airport in Burbank, California. How's the administration reacting to this, and are we bracing for more of those type closures?
Yeah, this is the kind of trickle-down effects that you start to see when a shutdown drags on, and that we saw in some of the longer ones in years past, where people are still required to come to work. TSA employees are required to come to work. The air traffic controllers are required to come, but they're working without pay until they should be paid back at the end of the shutdown. But as these shutdowns drag on, you start to see kind of sick outs, you start to see people calling in, and that's what has started to happen at, you mentioned the airport out in California. So the Trump administration just is consistently saying that this is all the fault of the Democrats. Of course, Democrats are saying the same thing in reverse. And so no, as long as it's more of a projection outward and a blame game as opposed to, okay, well, how are we going to fix this? That's not what you want to see, certainly. And now there is new concern that I mentioned that, you know, TSA workers, the people that are required to work without pay during the shutdown are by law meant to be paid back when it's over. But there is now a memo circulating around the White House that is suggesting that the Trump administration may be seeking to circumvent that, or is trying to interpret that law in some different way to suggest that they may not, in fact, have to pay back federal workers, those who are furloughed, at least throughout the shutdown. And that is something that is going to face some very stiff legal challenge. But so a very serious question there that again is raising the stakes, and that has been the tactic from the Trump administration, is to say, okay, Democrats, if you are going to continue to withhold votes that would allow the Senate to pass the stopgap funding measure, then we're going to kind of pile on the pain. They've talked about cutting federal workers, though so far that has not come to pass, and we're not clear exactly when that may sort of be triggered. And now we may not pay back people who have been forced to be furloughed while this shutdown is ongoing. Democrats are continuing to stand firm that there needs to be this extension of Obamacare subsidies in order to prevent people's insurance premiums from really shooting up, you know, doubling, tripling what they've been with those subsidies, and that they believe this is the moment to get that done and use that as kind of a pivot point to get their support to reopen the government. Republicans consistently saying that's a separate issue and that it can't be discussed until the government is reopened. And that, again, is where we stand right now, Chesley.
Gotcha. I got about 15 seconds left. Are you hearing about any light at the end of the tunnel here?
Not particularly. And that's my 15 seconds.
There you go. All right, Alice, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your insight. Really appreciate it.